I always knew my stepmother didn't like me, but I never imagined she'd try to steal everything my father worked for. It started with a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Late one night, as I walked past the kitchen, I heard laughter, not the kind that warms your heart, the kind that makes your stomach drop. "I'll make sure she gets nothing." Victoria's voice cut through the air, sharp and dripping with venom. Maddie giggled. "Dad won't even know what hit him." My heart stopped. They weren't just plotting to push me out of the family. They were planning to cut me out of my father's will entirely. I could have walked away, pretended I didn't hear, but I wasn't about to let them win. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. My mind raced, but I knew I couldn't let emotions take over. If Victoria and Maddie wanted to play dirty, I needed to be smarter. I stayed calm, pretending nothing had changed. Every smile I gave them felt like a performance. But I wasn't about to tip them off. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention to everything: the hushed phone calls, the documents Victoria kept in her study, and the way Maddie suddenly seemed overly sweet to my dad. I started recording their conversations when they thought I wasn't around. The more I listened, the worse it got. They weren't just planning to cut me out, they were trying to convince my dad I didn't deserve anything at all. "He's getting weaker," Victoria said one afternoon, her voice low but smug. "If we keep him distracted, he'll sign whatever I put in front of him." Maddie laughed softly. "She'll be out on the street before she even knows what happened." My chest burned with anger, but I swallowed it down. Confronting them now would only give them the upper hand. I needed proof, undeniable, solid evidence. The next day, I went to my dad's office, hoping to talk to him alone. He looked more tired than usual, his once bright eyes dull. "Dad, can we talk?" I asked carefully. He smiled weakly. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" I hesitated. If I came on too strong, Victoria would spin it against me. "Have you changed anything about the will recently?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. His brow furrowed. "Victoria mentioned we should revisit it, but I haven't signed anything yet." "Why?" Before I could answer, Victoria appeared in the doorway, her eyes narrowing. "Olivia, darling," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "we shouldn't burden your father with these things. He needs to rest." My dad glanced between us, confused. I wanted to scream, but instead, I forced a smile and nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry, Dad," I said softly, though my heart was pounding. Later that night, I found Daniel, my childhood friend and now a lawyer, and told him everything. He listened carefully, his expression darkening with every word. "If they're forging documents, that's fraud," he said, "but we need hard proof. A suspicion won't hold up in court." That's when I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to stop them, I was going to make sure they paid for what they were doing. Days blurred together as I played the part of the obedient, clueless daughter, but inside, I was burning. Every fake smile from Victoria and Maddie felt like a slap. Every shared glance between them a reminder of what they were stealing from me. Then came the night everything changed. I had come home late from meeting Daniel, and the house was quiet, too quiet. As I walked past my father's study, I saw a sliver of light under the door. Curiosity prickled at me, but what I heard froze me in place. "Just sign here, Henry," Victoria's voice cooed, low and persuasive. "It's just a small update, to make things easier for us all." My father's voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. I don't understand. Olivia doesn't need anything from you." She cut him off smoothly. "She's young. She'll be fine. You want to take care of Maddie and me, don't you?" My hands shook. They were doing it, right now. I couldn't let this happen. I burst through the door without thinking. "Dad, stop." Victoria's head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Olivia, this isn't your business." "It's exactly my business," I shot back, voice trembling. "Dad, don't sign anything." My father looked at me, confusion and exhaustion clouding his face. Victoria recovered quickly, her voice dripping with faux concern. "She's just overwhelmed, Henry. She doesn't understand how these things work." I turned to him, desperate. "Dad, please, just let me read it first." Before he could answer, Maddie appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Oh, Give it a rest. Olivia, you're just mad because you're not getting a free payday. Her words hit me like a slap. But I refused to back down. This isn't about money. It's about family, something you clearly know nothing about. Victoria's eyes flashed. You ungrateful little. Enough. My father's voice, though weak, cut through the tension. He looked at Victoria, his expression clouded with doubt. I think I need to lie down. Victoria immediately stepped to his side, her face a perfect mask of concern. Of course, sweetheart, let's get you to bed. As they left the room, Maddie stayed behind, smirking. Face it, Olivia, you've already lost. I wanted to scream, but I swallowed the rage. This wasn't over, not yet. Later that night, unable to sleep, I wandered downstairs. I needed air, but as I passed Victoria's study, I noticed the door slightly ajar, and Maddie inside, hunched over the desk. My heart skipped a beat when I saw what she was doing. She was forging his signature. My stomach twisted. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and hit record. Don't mess it up this time. Maddie muttered to herself. Mom will kill me if he catches on. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until she stood up and left. Only then did I exhale, my heart slamming against my ribs. I had the proof I needed. But this wasn't just about exposing them anymore. They weren't going to stop until they had everything, and left my father with nothing. Before I dive into what happened next, the moment that turned this entire nightmare on its head, I want to hear from you. Have you ever caught someone lying to get their way? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments. And if you're rooting for me to take them down, hit that like button, because trust me, this battle is far from over. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maddie forging my father's signature, her smug grin, her careless words. But now, I had the upper hand. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. This wasn't just about stopping them anymore. It was about protecting my father. No matter what it took. Daniel came over as soon as I called. His jaw tightened when I showed him the video. This is more than enough, he said firmly. We can stop them before they do any more damage. I nodded, but part of me wasn't satisfied. I didn't want to just stop them. I wanted them to face consequences they couldn't weasel out of. By afternoon, the house felt heavy with tension. Victoria and Maddie acted as if nothing had happened the night before. Victoria hummed softly as she brewed tea in the kitchen, while Maddie scrolled through her phone, lazily draped over the couch. I sat down across from them, heart pounding. We need to talk. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Oh, about what, dear? I didn't flinch. About how you're trying to steal everything from my father, and how I have proof. For a second, Victoria's mask slipped. Maddie sat up straighter, eyes narrowing. You're delusional, Victoria scoffed. But I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. I leaned forward, my voice steady. I heard everything. I recorded Maddie forging Dad's signature last night. And I already sent it to Daniel. Maddie's face went pale. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone, tapping the screen. Maddie's voice filled the room, clear as day. Don't mess it up this time. Mom will kill me if he catches on. Victoria's face twisted into something ugly. But before she could speak, my father's voice came from behind us. Is this true? We all turned. My dad stood in the doorway, his face pale, his voice quiet, but his eyes weren't confused anymore. They were heartbroken. Victoria tried to recover, her voice turning syrupy again. Henry, darling, she's twisting things. You know Olivia has always been. Enough. His voice cut through the room like a knife. He looked at me, and his expression softened. Olivia, I'm so sorry. For a moment, the weight of it all hit me. The betrayal, the lies, the months of pretending everything was okay. My throat tightened, but I swallowed hard and nodded. You don't have to apologize, Dad. I just want you to be safe. He nodded slowly, then turned to Victoria and Maddie. His voice shook, but his words were clear. Get out of my house. Victoria's face crumbled, but Maddie's mouth fell open in shock. Dad, you can't be serious. Maddie protested, voice shrill. I trusted you, he said quietly. Both of you. And you tried to take everything from me, from Olivia. I want you gone. Now. Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then scoffed. You'll regret this. Henry. He didn't even blink. No, I regret trusting you. They left in a whirlwind of angry whispers and slamming doors. For the first time in months. The house felt quiet, but not in a bad way. It felt peaceful. My dad sank into his chair, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. I don't know how I let this happen, he admitted softly. I sat beside him, taking his hand. You wanted to believe they loved you. That's not your fault. He squeezed my hand gently. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled through the sting in my eyes. We're family. That's what we do. The next few weeks weren't easy. Daniel helped my dad straighten out the legal mess Victoria and Maddie left behind. It took time, and a lot of patience, but eventually, things started to feel normal again. My dad seemed stronger, clearer. We spent more time together than we had in years. For once, it wasn't strained or awkward. It felt like we were healing. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to me. I'm changing the will, he said quietly. I tensed. Dad, you don't have to. I'm not doing it out of anger. He interrupted gently. I'm doing it because I want to make sure you're taken care of. I should have done it a long time ago. Tears burned in my eyes. But this time, they weren't from sadness. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I love you, Dad. He kissed the top of my head. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. A week passed, and for the first time in months, things felt normal. The house was quieter, lighter even, without Victoria and Maddie's constant presence. Dad looked healthier, more present. He even started cooking again, though his attempt at spaghetti was more of a disaster than a dinner. Daniel stopped by often, helping Dad sort through the mess of paperwork Maddie and Victoria left behind. He assured us everything would be fine. And I believed him. For once, it felt like the worst was finally over. Until the letter came. It arrived in a plain white envelope, slid under our front door. No stamp, no return address, just my name. Handwritten in messy, familiar script. Maddie's. I stared at it for a long moment, my chest tightening. Part of me didn't want to open it, but curiosity, or maybe stubbornness, won out. My hands shook as I tore it open. Olivia, you think you won, but you don't know everything. Mom didn't start this, Dad did. Ask him about Catherine. My heart dropped into my stomach. Catherine? The name meant nothing to me. Who was she? And why would Dad be involved in any of this? Daniel noticed the change in my expression the second he walked in. What's wrong? Wordlessly, I handed him the letter. His eyes darkened as he read it. This could be a trap, he said cautiously. Maddie's a liar. You can't trust her. I wanted to believe that. I really did, but a nagging feeling wouldn't let go. What if she wasn't lying? What if there was something more, something Dad hadn't told me? I found him in his office, sorting through old files. He looked up, smiling when he saw me. Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? I swallowed hard. Dad? Who's Catherine? The color drained from his face. His hands froze mid-motion. For a moment, the room felt deathly still. He sank into his chair, running a hand down his face. I was hoping you'd never have to hear that name. My stomach twisted. Dad, please. I need to know. He exhaled shakily. Catherine was your mother's best friend. And she was my first love. Before I met your mom. I blinked, caught off guard. Okay, but what does that have to do with Victoria and Maddie? He hesitated. After your mom passed away, Catherine came back into my life. I was a mess. She helped me. I thought I loved her again. But she didn't want me. She wanted what your mom left behind. My heart pounded. Victoria is Catherine's sister. His voice was barely a whisper now. The room tilted. I gripped the desk to steady myself. You mean, this wasn't random? Victoria planned this from the start? He nodded slowly. I didn't realize it until it was too late. By then, she was already in my life. I was lonely, and she knew exactly what to say to keep me that way. The weight of it all crashed down on me. Victoria hadn't just stumbled into our lives. She wasn't just a manipulative woman who saw an opportunity. She had a personal vendetta from the very beginning. Why didn't you tell me? My voice broke despite myself. Dad's eyes filled with tears. Because I was ashamed. I thought if I pretended it wasn't true, it would go away. I never wanted you to get hurt. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Dad, we need to finish this. For good. His gaze met mine, and for the first time in a long while, I saw something unbreakable in his eyes. You're right, he said quietly. No more secrets. As I left his office, my mind was spinning. Victoria hadn't just stolen my dad's trust. She'd been planning this from the start. And Maddie knew. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal, or the realization that none of this was over yet. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying Dad's confession, Maddie's letter, and the twisted truth behind Victoria's lies. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, smug, victorious, like they still had the upper hand. Not anymore. By morning, I had a plan. Daniel wasn't thrilled when I told him. Olivia, they're dangerous. Maddie's been manipulating you for years. And Victoria, I know. I cut him off, my voice steadier than I felt. But I'm done being scared. They've taken enough from us. It's time they face the truth, all of it. He didn't argue after that. He just nodded. I'm with you. Whatever happens. Victoria wasn't hard to find. She was staying at a hotel downtown, no doubt burning through whatever money she and Maddie had managed to siphon away before the truth came out. Daniel and I waited until we saw Maddie arrive, then followed her up to the suite. My hands trembled as I knocked on the door, but my voice didn't waver when Victoria swung it open. Her eyes widened in shock. Olivia? Surprised to see me? I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Maddie appeared from the bedroom, freezing mid-step when she saw me. You have a lot of nerve showing up here. Victoria sneered, recovering quickly. After what you did to us. What I did? I laughed, a cold, hollow sound. You stole from my family. You manipulated my dad. You tried to cut me out of his life completely. Don't talk to me about nerve. Victoria crossed her arms, smirking. And what are you going to do about it? Sweetheart? The will's already been changed. Your father signed it himself. Actually, I said slowly, pulling a folded document from my bag. He didn't. Maddie's face paled. Victoria's smirk faltered. What's that? She snapped. A copy of the original will. And a sworn statement from my dad, detailing every lie, every manipulation, and how you blackmailed him into rewriting it. I stepped closer. You lose. Victoria's mask cracked, her voice rising. You think this will hold up in court? I have lawyers. So do we. Daniel cut in sharply from the doorway. And unlike yours, ours actually know the law. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Maddie, silent until now, finally spoke. Olivia, please, you don't understand. Mom did this for us. She used you. Maddie, my voice softened despite the fire burning inside me. She used both of us. You're not her daughter, you're her weapon. Don't you see that? Her eyes filled with tears. For a split second, I thought I saw the sister I used to know. The one who laughed with me at the lake. Who held my hand at Mom's funeral. Then she looked away. She's all I have. My heart broke, again. But this time, I didn't let it stop me. No, Maddie, I said quietly, she's all you've ever had. But you had me too, and you threw me away for her lies. Silence stretched between us. Maddie didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just stared at the floor like a child who finally realized they'd lost a game they never really wanted to play. Victoria's voice snapped the moment. Get out, she spat, her face red with fury. Both of you. I smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. We were just leaving. I stopped at the door, turning back one last time. Oh, and Victoria? The authorities will be in touch. You might want to start packing for somewhere less comfortable. She lunged for me, but Daniel blocked her easily. He didn't even look at her. He just walked me out, his hand on the small of my back like a silent reminder, it's over. We didn't speak on the drive home. I didn't need to. The weight in my chest felt lighter than it had in months. It wasn't victory. Not really. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Maddie made her choice. So did Victoria. And now? It was my turn to start over. For me. And for Dad. The days after the confrontation felt strangely quiet. Victoria and Maddie didn't reach out. Not that I expected them to. It was over, the lawyers confirmed it. Dad's original will was reinstated. And Victoria's manipulation was laid bare. Fraud, coercion, financial abuse. The words looked so cold and clinical on paper. But they carried weight. Weight that would pull Victoria into the consequences she deserved. The last I heard, she was facing charges. Her assets were frozen. And the lavish life she built on lies crumbled beneath her. Maddie disappeared. She didn't show up in court. No calls. No messages. A part of me hoped she'd find her way back. But deep down, I knew better. She made her choice. I made mine too. Dad was getting stronger every day. He still wasn't the man he used to be, the lively, unstoppable force who taught me how to ride a bike and made me pancakes on Saturdays. But he smiled more now. Real smiles, not the hollow, distant ones I'd grown used to. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, he reached for my hand. "I'm proud of you, Liv," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I'm so sorry for everything you went through because of me." Tears burned behind my eyes. But I blinked them away. We went through it together, Dad, and we're still here. That's what matters. He squeezed my hand, for the first time in what felt like forever. I believed him. Daniel and I stood by the lake a week later, the same lake where Maddie and I used to play when we were kids. The water shimmered under the setting sun, calm and endless. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked softly. I smiled, leaning into him. "Yeah, but for once, I'm not scared of it." He kissed my temple. "Good, because you deserve a fresh start." We both do. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe it'd be messy and complicated. Maybe it'd hurt sometimes. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Victoria and Maddie took a lot from me. They almost took everything. But they didn't win. I did. And this time, the ending was mine to write. This story isn't just about betrayal and revenge, it's about resilience. Standing up for what's right. And reclaiming your life when others try to take it from you. Olivia's journey reminds us that even when the people closest to us turn against us, we have the strength to rise above it all. What do you think? If you loved this story and felt connected to Olivia's journey, comment 2 below. If it wasn't your cup of tea, comment 7. I'd love to hear your honest thoughts. And if you want more stories like this, packed with twists, emotion, and satisfying endings, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to come.